Hello, my name is Brahma Muhurta Das, and today we are interviewing His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami about the editing of Srila Prabhupada's books. Especially, we're asking him today about the manuscripts for the Bhagavad-gita. Welcome, Jayadvaita Maharaj. How was the Bhagavad-gita made? There are manuscripts, various stages, what is available, and exactly what are those documents?
Okay. The manuscripts are different for different sections of Bhagavad-gita. We have one set of manuscripts for the first 6 chapters, another set of manuscripts, or several sets of manuscripts for the second 6, and then again different manuscripts for the last 6. They're in different stages of production. There are different kinds of manuscripts, and I'll take you through that in this series. Let's start off and look at a manuscript from the very first chapter. This manuscript, or this is the first page of Bhagavad-gita as it is. You can see the titles originally, Gita-upanishad. And you see right away the Sanskrit is quite in place. It's spelled properly and diacritic marks are there. Every word is in place. That's because, as far as I understand it, this manuscript was typed by Srila Prabhupada himself, as he did with his early manuscripts, or possibly someone typed it from something typed or written by Srila Prabhupada. I tend to think that it was typed by Srila Prabhupada on one of those typewriters that I personally saw in his closet at 26 2nd Avenue. Now, when you read the text, you see that it does need some editing. Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjaya, my sons and the sons of Pandu, after being assembled in the pilgrimage of Kurukshetra with the desire to fight, what did they do?" Now that doesn't match either the first or second editions. There's some work needs to be done. Sanjaya is a name, it needs to be capitalized. Pilgrimage is spelled wrong, and it really means a place of pilgrimage, so some work needs to be done. Now there will be a purport here, but for the first few verses of Bhagavad-gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada typed the purports separately, so they appear on separate pages. And so here he's written in, this is Prabhupada's handwriting, I believe, number 1, so purport number 1 goes here. And then someone is, or Prabhupada, I guess, has typed chapter 2, but here it's corrected that it's text number 2 that's going to go here. So you see this is quite a clear manuscript. Let's take a look now at the purport and see how that looks. This is Prabhupada's typing of the purport for the first verse. And the chapter goes on looking quite like this, single-spaced typing with all the Sanskrit words in place and everything fairly clear, needing editing for the English and so on, but quite orderly.
So most likely this is the original before any editing had happened.
Definitely. There's no editing has been done here. That's quite plain.
Okay.
Shall we look at the next slide? Now, this manuscript is different. This manuscript has been retyped from that original manuscript. You can see the word-for-word meanings that were stacked up have now been pulled together.
It's still the same text.
It's still the same text. Nothing really has changed in the underlying text that's typed. It's only been made, basically the main difference is that it's now double-spaced so that an editor has some room to get in there and do some work. This particular manuscript was not used actually for production. You can see here, do not compose, for checking only. That's Hayagriva Prabhu's notation.
Well, excuse me, what does this mean, do not compose?
Composing is the work of actually typesetting. So he's saying, don't use this manuscript as the one that you composed the book for. This is my reference, another manuscript I'm looking at for reference.
Hayagriva said that.
Hayagriva's indicating that. And that means there was another manuscript quite similar to this one, but with his actual final corrections on it. There were typically, when this was typed up, there'd be carbon copies made, and so there'd be duplicate copies of the manuscript.
But this is Hayagriva's handwriting.
Now this appears to be Hayagriva's handwriting, because Hayagriva worked on Bhagavad-gita as it is at different times, actually. He that's a long story, but he worked on it in different periods. But you can see here he's quite fixed it up. After assembling in the place of pilgrimage now at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? Now that matches or is quite close to what we have in the Macmillan edition.
So most likely what we see here now are two different stages of editing. The black text, the black handwritten text is one stage, and the blue one is yet another stage. So
yeah, he obviously
possible?
didn't do it exactly the same time. But when I said that he did two different stages, that's why they're two different manuscripts. In 1 year, he'd gone through it and done one thing, and then later he came back and reviewed the entire text of Bhagavad-gita as it is, keeping some of the things he'd done before, some of the things after. So the manuscripts may not match there. And this, in any case, is clearly a manuscript that he, as he himself indicated, didn't intend to be the one that goes all the way through production. This is one he had as a reference, I would say as a reference of what he'd already done before. Okay, now this, we've gone from the beginning of the chapter to the end of the chapter. Text 45 and 46 are the last two verses of the chapter. And you can see the same species of manuscript is here. It's neatly typed. It's got the Sanskrit all in place. It needs some serious editing. Even though the sons of Dhritarashtra kill me in the fight, in spite of my becoming without any weapons and without any attempt for fighting, still I shall consider it better than to fight with them. So some editing is clearly needed. This is really a virgin manuscript, and it's, of the whole first 6 chapters, pretty much look quite like this.
still possibly Srila Prabhupada's original typing.
I would say most likely Srila Prabhupada's personal typing. Otherwise, the only alternative is that someone typed it from Srila Prabhupada's original, just copying exactly what was there. No editing has been done here. That's clear. Let's look at what we've got next. Now, here, that same text has been retyped without changing anything, really, but it's been double-spaced. And now, this is Hayagriva, and this, to me, does, in fact, look like his production manuscript, although not necessarily so. It could still be... in fact, yes. This may not be a production manuscript. It may be, again, for checking, quite likely, in fact. But you can see that he's, again, edited it. Now the text reads pretty much the way it's going to be in the end. I would consider it better if the sons of Dhritarashtra kill me unarmed and unresisting, rather than fight with them. It's now quite good English. And you can see he's gone through it. He's changed some things, he's adjusted a sentence, he's fixed up some things that were ungrammatical, he's made all sorts of editorial changes and refinements to bring the book up to what he considered a suitable standard for publishing. This is now an edited manuscript. The manuscript we looked at before, the single-space one, is an unedited manuscript. And unedited manuscripts is what we never published.
But you refer to both as manuscripts?
Both as manuscripts. There's an unedited manuscript, and there's an edited manuscript. And there's a final edited manuscript, which becomes the one that goes to the typesetters and becomes the book.
Through the composing.
To the composing and becomes the book.
This is quite a lot of editing. Is it like that for the entire Bhagavad-gita? Or is this exceptionally much editing?
This is typical, it's average. It looks a little more than it is up here because he's just crossed the whole sentence out and rewritten it, but he's really retained a lot of the original elements. So it looks like a little more than it is. I would say this is kind of middle of the road. There's places where there's not this much editing, and there's places where it's even heavier than this. So this is kind of in the middle. This is quite in the middle. The thing I suppose we should understand is sometimes devotees think that Prabhupada spoke and the editor just sort of added the punctuation marks, cleaned up the spelling, and maybe fixed did a few minor grammatical adjustments. But in fact, to bring the English to a good standard for publishing, there's more that's needed. There are things that get crossed out, there are things that get moved around, and what you hope for is that you've kept the meaning intact, which is what Srila Prabhupada most cared about, that the meaning has been preserved even in the process of making the text more grammatical, avoiding redundancies, repeating the same thing unnecessarily. It should flow nicely, it should be clear. Prabhupada told Hayagriva, edit for force and clarity. So it should now be clear, it should be forceful, and the meaning should be the same. That's the editor's goal. And Hayagriva did a very good job. He was a very good editor, and we all owe him a debt for the work he's done.
Did Srila Prabhupada give Hayagriva Prabhu freedom to do this, or did he consult with Hayagriva and discuss every change with him, or how was that done?
He gave directions to Hayagriva overall what to do. There are places where he's looked at the text and adjusted it himself. Very few places actually where you see that Prabhupada he's added a verse and filled in the Sanskrit or something like that. And Hayagriva tells us in his book, The Hare Krishna Explosion, what the process was like. Mostly he worked on his own. And at some points he did consult Prabhupada, but he said that Prabhupada got very tired very quickly of dealing with these small things and wound up spending most of the time preaching to Hayagriva, talking to him about the philosophy and not getting bogged down, as it were, with the details of the text. He told him what to do: keep it faithful, don't change the meaning, you have a little more freedom in the translation. So he gave him directions and then left it to him to do it properly.
Why more freedom in the translations?
Prabhupada considered the purports to be his special contribution. He said, my emotional ecstasies. It's the place where he's commenting. He said, otherwise the translation is Krishna's words, and there are other translations that are more or less okay. So he didn't mind having Hayagriva borrow here or there. He said that rather than kind of sort through the perplexities of Prabhupada's translations, which could sometimes be difficult, Hayagriva sometimes just relied on another translation, pulled in a phrase, pulled in a few words, pulled in maybe a whole verse, and Srila Prabhupada said that was okay. So that's another feature that you get. You get Hayagriva is sometimes reworking Prabhupada's text, and sometimes for a translation, and you see this not here but elsewhere, sometimes you'll see he's just pasted over it with a new translation.
So these are the first 6 chapters.
These are the first 6 chapters. As you go through the first 6 chapters, they all look pretty much like this. You'll see an original manuscript, very neat and clean, single-spaced, and then you'll see a retyped manuscript with double spacing and work going on.
Where are these manuscripts now?
They're all, the manuscripts that we have are all in the Bhaktivedanta archives. They're being kept there in fireproof file cabinets, and they're also being, they in fact have been digitized so that we have digital copies of these in several places.
Are they accessible to the public?
They're not accessible. They're accessible to people who have a professional sort of need to access them. Our BBT staff, various devotees in the BBT staff refer to them for their work. Tamal Krishna Goswami, when he was writing his doctoral thesis, asked to have a copy of the manuscripts that he could refer to and write about. So we thought that was certainly a reasonable purpose, and he was a qualified person. So we made them available to him. But they're not available just for devotees who would go through them and say, why did they do this? Why did they do that? Oh my God, look at this. Oh my God, look at that. They're not trained and qualified to really understand what they're doing. And sometimes they're not, frankly, responsible people. They're people who just get on the internet and start typing without having a patient and sober understanding. So, in fact, Rameshwar Maharaj at one point asked Srila Prabhupada, should we release these things to the public? I think it's better if we just keep them locked up, because the final books are what we want to present to the public. And Srila Prabhupada gave his approval for that. So that's been our general policy with these manuscripts, not to just send them out there. What the public needs is Prabhupada's books. And what translators or editors need are original manuscripts that they may sometimes refer to, or what scholars may sometimes look for.
Okay. That's it about the
That's
first
it for the first 6 chapters. And as I said, the next 6 chapters are very different, and we'll come to that in our next installment.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.